Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander. Dave, nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. To get into things that I guess marketers and agency people might be more interested in. You're in the direct mail space now, but you have a really interesting background. I was very excited for this interview. But for those that don't know you, would you mind kind of giving a high level background on kind of where you're coming at this from? Yeah.
Sure. And I'll start by saying, yes, the media channel that my company and I are fully immersed in right now is direct mail, but really we're a technology company. Everything we focus on and think about are how do we leverage all the technologies in addressable, marketing, programmatic marketing, quant marketing that have made us all smarter, more predictive, more process oriented, and hopefully more effective. How do we bring that into a more analog channel like direct mail to open up another monster channel in a world where social and search are dominated by two behemoths that don't always make our lives easy. Yeah. So the reason I mentioned that is because I think that lines up a little bit more with kind of my background trajectory. So spent almost 25 years at this point in the consumer internet space. It's where I, for all practical purposes, started my career back in about 1999. And I just always was fascinated with the idea of kind of building emerging technology in companies. So the idea of how do you take an idea and how do you bring it into the world and add value and generate scale. And I did that, had the opportunity to kind of bounce back and forth between building direct-to-consumer brands that relied very heavily on obviously technology in their commerce stack, but also in how they drive awareness, growth, retention, et cetera, digital channels. And then, got fixated on all of these channels and then spent other times of my career building out marketing technology platforms that, were enablement tools, always in digital channels. So this is the first time that I've ventured outside of digital, but that kind of experience, understanding that channels come and go, especially in emergent spaces like digital, but the knowledge and way we kind of operate tends to constantly be up and to the right. It's similar to like markets. Everybody's talking about the economy right now, and you kind of channels will like oscillate, but the knowledge is always up and to the right. And so where I sit right now after again, almost 25 years of doing this is realizing that it's really about storytelling and brand development and quality products and services and understanding your customers and who your prospect customers are and thinking about ways to kind of share that brand story, all of the benefits that your business provides in any number of media contexts, but to do it in a controlled and measurable way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, and that makes sense that you kind of keep building on the knowledge and there'd be like lessons that you could apply to any channel. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you've sort of built a business around one particular channel that is not a new one. It's maybe the oldest one, right? Since like the Pony Express or whatever. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like what inspired you to build a business around direct mail?
The idea didn't start with, let's go figure out how to tackle direct mail. The idea was really mission driven around the pain that we were feeling with Facebook, quite frankly. So like so many brands, we fell in love with the sophistication, with the reach, with the capabilities that channel gave us to run quantitative marketing in a really big environment, right? I mean, Facebook became ubiquitous for the internet. And starting about 6 years ago, the CMOs and the VP of growth and the customer acquisition teams and even CRM teams that we were engaging with were really nervous and feeling a lot of pain. And that was because at that point, there were kind of like two, I think, like, oh crap moments that happened in Facebook. The first was when, the early days, it was all about buying likes and building, fan pages, and Facebook gave us all the tools to invest in building our communities and really their community. And then we all remember that day where they said, guess what? We're rolling out an algorithm. And now you're not naturally going to be able to reach all these people that you just spent millions of dollars to build a community around. We're going to charge you to reach those customers. And for them and their market cap, that was a brilliant idea. For advertisers, it felt kind of crummy. And to be quite honest, in some ways for consumers, it has now proven to be a fairly manipulative way to determine what content, I as a consumer, you as a consumer user of the platform receives. But from a marketing perspective, it created a lot more pain, a lot more expense. It had to, it was a moment where we're like, wow, this platform has a lot of power over us. Second pain point came along about this one was the one I was referencing about 6 years ago, where they kind of hit their ceiling with user growth. So the supply side of their business was fairly maxed out, and the entire world was fighting to figure out how to move ad dollars away from traditional channels into Facebook and then Instagram. And so, if supply stays consistent and demand increases in some cases exponentially, we all know basic economics, and ad rates went up and conversion rates went down. The quality of customers sourced on the channel had a lower expectant lifetime value, and the math just doesn't work. And so you end up with this conundrum, which is, hey, do I increase my allowable return on ad spend and keep taking advantage of the potential growth? Or do I get more disciplined and say, hey, my allowable is my allowable. I need to run a profitable customer acquisition strategy, in which case, the amount of budget that you can put to work in that channel, in this case, social through Facebook and Instagram, it comes down greatly. Neither one of those are great answers. And so for us, it was okay, we got to go find other big, powerful channels that can be just as effective, that we can run, take the applied knowledge that we've built over the past years and find more ways to grow our business. And so we spent a lot of time looking at other digital channels. And at that point, if you think 6 years ago, there was no TikTok, just didn't exist in its current form. Snap existed, but didn't have an ads platform or a real ads platform. There just wasn't another big programmatic way to reach consumers. And so then we started spending more time offline. And in offline, there are a lot of amazing channels. TV is great, of course, and can be effective, but it's not programmatic. At least linear TV is not, and it wasn't back then. And out of home is great, but not targeted the way that digital channels are. But we started really thinking about the qualities of direct mail, and in direct mail, it's monstrous in reach. You have your entire addressable market reachable through direct mail. There's a lot of quality data and ways to use your first-party data and third-party data for insights and targeting and optimization. And for many brands that are capturing data at transaction or the conversion point around their customers, there's direct measurement. And so you have this big scalable channel that's highly targetable, that reaches the entire addressable market, that's measurable. Now, all of a sudden, we're in business. What was missing was a technology layer to actually make the executional work possible, at least in the framework with which we had come to expect because of programmatic digital channels. So that's the real path of how we got here. And it was just really an authentic, organic, mission-driven, need that we and lots of marketers had.
That seems like a healthier way to go about something like that than just like a shiny object of how about this channel, right? So that makes a lot of sense to me. And circling back to your background a little bit and talking about, applied knowledge and everything, can you talk about Dollar Shave Club and, how you got acquainted with them and what you learned from them and that journey a little bit?
Sure. That was a fascinating, it's crazy to think about. It was like 4 to 5 years that whole kind of Dollar Shave Club story took place over, at that time, what felt like really long days and long weeks and long quarters. But in the reality, it happened. It was kind of the dream scenario. So my involvement with Dollar Shave Club was, I was one of the founding partners of a tech studio in Santa Monica called Science. And we invested in a range of direct-to-consumer brands, two-sided marketplaces, marketing technology platforms. And we had this really unique seat at the table where we had a portfolio of dozens and dozens of early stage startups. And Dollar Shave Club was one of the businesses that we were fortunate enough to be able to invest and help launch. At the time, Mike Dubin, who is the face of the brand, the brains of the brand, it was, his invention, and he was the CEO. Lots of people don't realize the charming, funny, creative guy on the videos is actually the person that created and ran the company. He showed up with an idea of selling razors directly through the internet. He had a very nascent, pipeline and supply chain, but access to some product. And at that point, a rough cut of what was the video that kind of really was an overnight sensation. For me, it was a tremendous turning point in my career and kind of understanding of marketing. Up till that point, I'd been so fixated on the pure quantitative test and optimization direct response components, right? Things like what font sizes drives conversion and what button colors helps fire more dopamine, so they're more likely to feel the need to engage with your landing page or your email creative or your ad. And those components are fun, and I'm a big proponent of psychology and behavioral economics. But what my experience with Dollar Shave Club taught me is that storytelling, brand building, especially in the rising era of social distribution, completely changes the scale of where you're playing. So while you may be able to optimize a direct-to-consumer razor brand so that you're picking up an extra point in conversion rate and you can put a little bit more budget to work, the difference between actually building a brand around a mission, the 10,000-pound gorilla of Gillette is overcharging you and building out features to give you a reason to pay more for razors, like that whole every man, every woman's mantra that Dollar Shave Club captured was told through brand development and storytelling and content and creative. And then you take that and all of a sudden you apply all of the kind of psychological, behavioral, economic, marketing tactics that help drive conversion, understanding, consumer funnels, certainly understanding targeting and optimization and measurement. And it's just a whole different level of scale. So when you look at Dollar Shave Club, that in 4 years went from zero to hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue and $1 billion plus exit before everybody was getting $1 billion exits. This is a different time and space. Mm-hmm. You saw that there's more to marketing, there's more to building a business than just getting the tactics right.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. And it's funny because it's almost like, I wouldn't even think of it as channeling a mission, as channeling like a deep sense of mythology, like think about.
I love that. I think that's great. I'm about to start rereading Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. Right. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but deep lessons in even how modern cultures respond to the power of myth, essentially.
Right, because you think about like anyone that shaved. We were talking about shaving before this, but like anybody that shaved before has gone through that process of like going into a drugstore and just getting gouged and being like mildly annoyed about it, and then walking out and like forgetting about it, and then all of a sudden there's this thing that just channels this like nascent anger in you, this sense of like unfairness, right? It's like deep in your gut, and then they just wrote. It seems like the company wrote that, but I guess what's your take on that? Like what did it feel like being involved in that company? Was there a moment when you're like, this is taking off, or this has channeled something in the zeitgeist, or like, what did it actually feel like being involved?
Yeah, the day it launched. So Mike Dubin had spent a lot of time in deep thinking and preparation, and he's very, very focused storyteller. And so, every piece of content he wanted to line up with the mission and the brand vision that he had. Lots of preparation. And then you also have to remember it was at a time when there wasn't this category called viral videos. And so Dollar Shave Club really created that and taught the world the power of YouTube as a platform and social distribution. And so they were able to catch a period where that video launched. And I think later that day, it was on YouTube's homepage, right? That was a time when the algorithm kind of was like an all or nothing. Everybody saw that video, and not only did it translate into entertainment, it actually translated into site visitors and traffic, and shut down the site. So it just crashed the site. Servers we were unprepared for the type of volume, and his technology team and science brought in every engineer that we had on the team to really quickly, all hands on deck, and spin up more servers. At the same time, we were literally packing, or had like zebra label printers in the aisles of our office, and all the fulfillment was taking place by just anyone that was in the office at that time. So it was like a mad dash to learn about what third-party logistics is all about. It was a mad dash to spin up customer service teams and be able to handle, not lose that wave of customer engagement because there was limited product, there was limited bandwidth and server space, et cetera. It was like, I mean, they could definitely create a movie about the Dollar Shave Club launch. It was the first time that I had seen what viral really was.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you feel about virality now? Is it even worth thinking about and pursuing? Can it exist now? Like, what? Yeah, what's your take on virality?
Yeah, I think so. And there's two ways to tackle it. There's a way that I like, and then a way that is possible but exhausting and painful. And I think that's with most things. So the exhausting and painful way is to try and orchestrate it, right? And I can tell you that at Science, as the partner that was responsible for growth and marketing across the portfolio, for years, we would have entrepreneurs with ideas show up and say, "Hey, we want to partner with Science. Can you just create a viral video for us?" And it was kind of, I would laugh. It's like, oh, sure. Like, let me bring out my magic wand. Mike Dubin didn't create that video thinking like, how do I create a viral sensation? He thought, how do I tell a story in a funny, charming, authentic way that
Right.
I think he thought supported the mission of the company. And so that's the other way to do it, right? Which is like, their social distribution is all algorithmic based. Share functions across the web, mobile are as easy as ever before. Content can be shared in a blink of an eye. So things that do capture, like you said, the zeitgeist or the moment, whether it's nationally, globally, or within a specific segment of consumer, absolutely can still go viral. And there are a number of platforms. It's harder because there's more competition for impressions, and those platforms are smarter with how to monetize that virality versus the organic distribution. But look, YouTube is still a beast. Facebook still is a beast. Instagram's, is a beast. It's not what it once was, but it still exists. TikTok is still a platform, is an emerging platform that has lots of virality. I think that now consumers are savvier than they've been in the past, even a decade ago. I think Dollar Shave Club launched in 2011, so 11 years ago. And back then it was this like confusion of when am I being entertained and when am I being sold to. I think now the typical consumer understands that what influencer marketing is and how brands use these platforms to sell. They still want to be a part of things that they believe in. So the authenticity of that brand story, whether there's viral boost behind it or paid boost behind it, it ultimately matters. And that's how you build lasting relationships with consumers. But yeah, I mean, I think we see all the time, we see products that are capturing virality. It may not be the day where Dollar Shave Club was the only viral video, tapped to a product, but that just means as marketers and brands, we have to be more thoughtful.
Yeah, and it seems just like the frequency of mass like shared experience is so much more seldom than it was in those days, right? Like you could talk to anybody and they would know the viral I would mean the Dollar Shave Club video, but not the same for most memes and like most things that go around these days, I guess.
It probably more segmented, more niche, and more flash in the pan because of the algorithms, right? Things
Yeah.
come and go fast. Dollar Shave Club, I think for 2 years, that video was trending in every social platform. It was being covered by mainstream media. Mike was getting requested speaking engagements at every major university's marketing department. It had a lot less competition, and I think that ties back to like the problem that we talked about trying to solve for now, which is even in the world of paid media on social platforms, there's so much competition that it's very hard to capture that type of impact today, just because you're fighting with so many other brands and savvy marketers for those same impressions.
Right, kind of an environment of scarcity, and it seems like because of that, people are just exhausted. Like I mean, at least I feel this subjectively that there's less novelty to social media and to digital communications writ large, I guess. Yeah.
Well, the media format has changed. I certainly remember thinking about short form video and short term storytelling years and years ago, and it does seem like Snap was on the forefront of that, and then certainly TikTok, and then Facebook copying all the other good ideas out there and putting its might and power behind it, has created shorter attention spans. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. I struggle. I mean, I took Facebook off my phone years
Yeah,
ago and haven't put it back on. I took Instagram off, but then I put it back on.
me too.
And I find myself sometimes not being able to turn off my brain and laying in bed and like literally counting down, like as I'm watching like Instagram reels or and
Yeah,
just be like, I'll give myself 10 more. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
well, I counted up. Now I count down. And I just can't like get off of it. And there's a lot of great content produced out there as part of it. I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't addictive. It's not just the
right.
media that's addictive. It's that there's like really funny, great, or inspiring content. It's just by the time you're done with a reel session or TikTok session, you've literally seen 1,000 disparate, unique pieces of content,
Yeah.
and you probably can't remember one of them.
Yeah, and well, I also just feel like there's, at least for me personally, and that's obviously extremely anecdotal, like there's less sharing, there's less of this sort of magic. This is hilarious, and you have to see it sort of vibe. But it's like drinking salt water almost now, at least for me.
Well,
Um,
it's a flash in the pan, right?
yeah, yeah,
It does give you, it gives you that like micro dose of dopamine, and it's just like
yeah.
that dog was funny, or that person falling off a bike was funny, or person running a prank was funny, and then you move on.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to bring this back to Posty in a second, but just to kind of like bookend the Dollar Shave Club story. How did the exit come about? I mean, was it a situation where it's like as soon as there's this massive success, there was like a target from the Unilevers of the world to acquire something like this, and that was always like on the horizon? Or was there a moment when it made sense? Or like how did that come about?
Yeah, if you wanted like the full details, you'd have to talk with Mike or Kevin, who's the GM over there, Adam, who's the CMO. They would have a bit more nuance from the close outside at that point. My recollection is that Mike had a year or two earlier had conversations and built a relationship with Unilever, and he wasn't interested in selling, and I don't know that if they were interested in buying or not, but they were certainly poking around, and that's just smart business, right? Like if you're grabbing attention, you have conversations with people that have been there, done that before. You have that type of exposure. You have to be careful not to share your trade secrets, but absolutely you capitalize on that time and space and the ability to build those type of relationships. And so a couple of years later, again, and this is from recollection and not being in the driver's seat at that point, it was pretty much an unsolicited offer,
Yeah,
and it was at a time and a magnitude where it caught the team's attention and made sense to take it very seriously. And they spent a lot of time at the highest level executive table with Unilever, understanding what an acquisition would look like, what that would mean for the future of the business, how would that look operationally. And I don't know if everybody, probably many people don't know this, but Mike Dubin stayed on for many years after.
hmm,
He cared a lot about that the brand that he built and the company that he built. He cared a lot about making sure that the acquisition that Unilever paid a pretty penny for exceeded the value. It was only the last few years that Mike eventually transitioned out, and so again, that whole story was really textbook, authentic, organic. They didn't hire bankers and go shop the deal.
yeah.
Came to them. It's every entrepreneur's dream. It really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, that's great. It must have been exciting to be a part of it. To bring this back to Posty, and I think you've talked a lot about the importance of kind of building a business around a mission. How do you think about that at Posty now? Like, is there a defined mission that you have, and if so, like, how did that come about?
For sure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we get up every day, and regardless of whether you're on the operations team or the demand gen team or our marketing team or our customer success team or our engineering team or data science team, or you're an agency working with us, we care about one thing, which is bring our knowledge and the continued learnings that we have in this space, in this business, to build the absolute industry leading technology to give advertisers the ability to grow their businesses in a controlled way with a little less stress. Like that is our mission. And the reason that's really important is when you think about the things that cause stress in an organization, it's Are we onboarding enough new customers? Are those customers sticking with us? Is there retention? Are they growing and scaling? Are they finding success? Are they happy with the service we're providing? Those are the things that I think the outputs that keep us up at night as entrepreneurs or people that care about the businesses that we're involved in. And you can't always control those, right?
Yeah.
But what you can control is the inputs. And it's something that we're starting to spend a lot more time on these days. Instead of being so fixated on how many new logos did we onboard, what does our net dollar retention look like? What does our logo retention look like? It's really the things of, are we doing everything in our power to give marketers the tools that they need to be successful, helping educate them, helping service them on the platform. And if we do that and do that really well, and it's not easy, and it's a constant learning cycle, then the results will speak for themselves. And I can tell you, one of the things that has always stuck with me, I started this business with Jonathan Nedenrip, and we're true partners in the business together. We balance each other out. There are moments of entrepreneurialism where you're on top of the world, and then there's 2 minutes later, someone pulls the chair out from under you, and it feels like the world is crashing in on you. It's a very up and down profession, but there are moments where I'm down, like I'm feeling depressed, and I'm really bummed out about a client or even a single campaign that they ran, isn't delivering what they expected or what we thought. I'm worried about potentially losing the client, et cetera. And Jonathan always kind of looks at me. He's like, look, we have one mission in this business, which is to provide technology that makes this channel performant for the broadest set of advertisers. And if we're doing that, then we have a great business. If we're not doing that, then we don't, and we should be doing something different. And everything in between is generally stuff we can't control. And I just think that that's a really powerful way to think about things. I'm not going to over exaggerate and say that I'm 100% mindful of that all the time, but in the very lowest moments of running a business, that piece of advice does come floating back into my brain, and it does help me, help remind me that, hey, instead of sitting here obsessing over what's going wrong, let's figure out how to either fix it, or let's realize it's an isolated use case. We still did everything right, and that's what matters, the inputs that we can control.
Yeah, I really like that, and it's almost exactly the same as what I've really been enjoying in this book on Amazon called Working Backwards that just came out pretty recently, I think. But that's one of their core values or principles is just like focusing just on the inputs, pretty much. And I mean, it's hard. I think it takes a lot of discipline, and it sounds like it's something that's top of mind for you guys. And another thing that I really liked about your homepage, and I think it makes sense given your background in the consumer space, is that you've taken such a great like consumer marketing approach to a high level, B2B product or service, which is like you're going to run direct mail with a click of a button, just like you would with digital ads. It's like, it's super simple. It makes sense. You can wrap your head around it. And not to toot my own horn, but I run a marketing podcast. I've been in the B2B space a while. I understand technology and approaches and generally how this stuff works, relatively sophisticated. 8 out of 10 B2B sites, I have no idea what the company does, after reading for a good amount of time. So kudos on that. And I'd love to get your take on it and just kind of how you think about marketing, Posty.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's awesome. We don't hear that enough. There's so many things we stress out and focus on and get feedback on. And that's not one that comes up often. So I will share that with our marketing team for sure and make sure that they listen to this podcast. It'll make them feel great. Sure. But it put a huge smile on my face because it wasn't accidental. Mm-hmm. We do care a lot about, look, we're marketers by trade. Like that's what we do. And so that's how we ended up in this business, like I shared earlier. But it was really important to us not to make this boring. And part of that was just for our own entertainment. We wanted to enjoy the ride and all aspects of it. And every B2B website looks the same, is using the same template and uses the same words. And we just didn't want to present that way, especially in direct mail that has this long history. There's a sea of traditional providers that all kind of do things the same way and haven't evolved in decades. And so we really wanted to cut through the noise. And one of the things that you didn't mention about the site, but that everybody seems to love are this cast of characters and animations that we use. So there's like,
Mhm.
you'll see, at least for right now, it's all basically sea animals in space as a theme. And it just came from working with a creative illustrator that we empowered to just like stop thinking about what like the traditional way to present this content would be. Like, let's just have fun with it. And so we have, octopuses in space, and we have sea monkeys in space, and we have fish with space, deep sea diving space helmets on. We have narwhals in space. And we will get asked, like, what is this? What is it? What is it? These characters represent. And they represent smiles
Yeah.
and engagement. Yeah, there could be, we've made up little stories and mythology over time internally, but they didn't start that way. It just made us happy. So I'm wearing one of our shirts right now.
Great.
It's a narwhal wearing a space helmet communicating with a satellite.
Yeah.
If you can tell me what that means, like, that would be amazing. Doesn't matter when I wear this shirt and I walk into like the trendiest coffee shops, I get complimented by the barista, which, like, as far as I'm concerned, is like,
Yeah.
if there's anyone that knows like culture and style, it's, baristas at expensive coffee shops.
Especially in
And
Austin.
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
especially in Austin. It
Yeah.
happened in Venice,
Okay.
California as
Same,
well,
same. Yeah.
in Santa Monica. And so to me, that's winning. It's putting a smile on our team's face. It's putting a smile on our client's face. They all want shirts. They all want coffee mugs and Yetis and whatever, with these characters. And I think that's the core piece of who we are as a culture, which is we're doing this with fun. We're tackling something that you'd expect to be very different, like, than the way that we're approaching it, and it's refreshing. And to
Yeah.
me, that just makes building this business even that much more fun.
That's great. And I think in the interest of time, I think maybe we'll skip over overrated, underrated, and instead use that time. Can you talk a little bit about how you're working with agencies and just kind of how you're partnering with people and that kind of thing?
Sure. Well, we work with kind of the full range of agencies, from small consultancies with a couple key people and a small brand roster. And I think those agencies are really interested in what we're doing because they have the opportunity to add value to their client roster by bringing them channels that they aren't currently working with, or that they're just kind of stuck with. And we're unlocking the full potential of direct mail. We also work with the biggest agency holding companies in the world, and those relationships are very integrated, where we're actually integrating our technology stack with their internal technology stacks. We're helping them educate their clients on the addressability of direct mail and how direct mail should be thought of as an integrated part of their entire addressable strategy. So it should be thought of hand in hand with their email strategy and their SMS strategy and their programmatic media strategy and their paid social strategies, and really everywhere in between. So, every agency is unique. You take the 5 big agency holding companies, they all, think and behave differently. It's why they have different client sets at different times. And it's been really interesting for us to kind of watch them evolve, see, their executive teams, eyes, get really wide when they realize the potential that direct mail can provide above and beyond what maybe some of the sub companies within their holding company are currently doing. And then we're also engaging with agencies that are solely digital, because you don't have to think about direct mail as paper and ink with post. You think about it as data in, data out. You think about it as execution from integration with your CRM or CDPs. So yeah, really the full stack, and it's been really enjoyable to engage really up and down that stack.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we could do, a whole nother hour on copywriting, on like data, on in the weeds tactics when it comes to direct mail. And hopefully we'll have the chance to do that. But Dave, how can people follow what you're up to, get in touch, all that good stuff?
For sure. Well, as you said, go check out the octopuses and the narwhals and space sea monkeys on postie.com. So that's just, postie.com. And I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. We work on publishing lots of content around case studies and white papers, share a bunch of data on the channel. So that we're always working on trying to make that content accessible and understandable. It's an easy way to reach our sales team as well if you're interested in a demo or just doing kind of a discovery session, learning what the channel can provide. If you have a question directly for me, best channel to reach me at is through LinkedIn, and it's David L. Fink is my handle. Or if you just search Dave Fink and Posty, you'll find me. And I'm big user of messaging tool built in there.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much for your time, man. We'll get all that linked up and yeah, let's do it again.
Sounds good. I'd love to.